Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. With that, I have an incredible guest today. Luiz Tângari is a serial entrepreneur with 4 startups under his belt. We're going to talk today about an interesting company called Tarkin. He's from Brazil. Hi, Luiz. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you today. So, what inspired the creation of I know you like the ag business, right? But what really inspired the creation of Tarkin, and how's the company really mission evolved since you started it?
I think it's such a big problem in agriculture. Everywhere in the world, agriculture is very dependent in financing. You have to buy seeds, pesticide, fertilizers, a bunch of stuff, and then you bury it into the ground and wait for a few months. And while you do that, the money is stuck there. So normally you have to have some kind of financing to make sure that the growers are properly funded to run their operations. In some places, this financing structure has been dealt with for a couple of decades ago, like in the US, for example, the sector is pretty much bunkerized. But in Latin America, especially in Brazil, most of this financing still comes from the industry. So the industry lends money to the distributor, and the distributor lends money to the growers. They actually sell on term, so people are going to pay when they harvest. So it's connected to a product sales, but it's credit. And for the last years, we have seen strong trend of margins getting tighter. So it's harder. If people are making a lot of money because the prices are up, so you still get more money, but the margins are tighter. You have to put more money into the operation. And proportionally, the revenues are, the profits are smaller in terms of, if you compare them to the revenue. And this has put a pressure on the quality of the credit. When you have such a large margin, you could support more, tolerate a bigger default rate. Now things get more complicated. You have to be much more efficient when granting credit. And we build a platform of software that uses AI and a bunch of other things to help the industry and the resellers and the seed companies to start lending money like a bank. So they have a proper data set. We help them to have a much better understanding with more granularity over their customers, the growers. We help them to have a credit policy. We have them to run all the processes that are needed to have statistical approach on credit, which is very important. And when they do that, normally they get a much better default rate, a more better structured process, and a process that is more friendly to the financial sector. So it makes it easier for them to connect to the financial sector and to start to having financial products embedded in them in their operations, so they can start having loans coming from banks and funds rather than coming from their own balance sheets. And that we work as a catalyzer in this process. We build the software infrastructure that make it possible to have a lot of data from the grower and run that data through a policy, the credit policy, and generate a rating. And this whole process is transparent enough to be trusted by the financial world. And then you can have financial products embedded. And then you can have the bankarization of the sector. That's what we do. And we serve almost 20% of the market share. So if you look at the credit, the agricultural credit market in Brazil is somewhere close to 70 billion, probably 70, 80 billion dollars per year. We run one in each $4 or each $5 in the platform. So we have a relatively big market share. We're still growing 15-20% per month. But there's still a lot of room to grow.
Well,
But
that's
we have,
that Luis. We deal in Africa, right? And all over Africa, we have startups. And in fact, one of my friends is one of their family's one of the wealthiest family in Africa. Not one of them, the number one. And I hear about it. Here's the thing, right? By 2050, we have to double the food supply to feed everybody. But he can't increase the number of cattle because 26% of the pollution is methane gas. So it means we're going to have more plant-based protein. So what you're doing is right on target with the market. We're going to need to feed people.
yes, we're going to have more soy and corn and cotton and coffee and all the stuff that we grow per hectare. And ideally, I think it's more than just eating. A lot of the farming area here now is moving into ethanol, into some other kinds of fuel. That also has a very important part. It's a huge issue, and there's a lot of different approaches to this issue. One of them is genetics. So you have to have a lot of research and understanding which kind of genetic is going to be capable of producing larger yields and being capable of tolerating drought and or excess of rain or pests and things like that. Then you have all the chemical innovation that also helps with innovative pesticides. And so, Brazil is the largest pesticide market in the world.
Well, it's interesting because one of the companies in GSD is actually a pesticide company that's doing organic pesticides, actually from Israel.
Yeah, it's a big market. It's important because it's not because we don't do things properly. It's because we have 2 seasons per year. So in the US, you have the winter, which basically is a big reset button. We don't have that here. So it's much more difficult to control insects and fungi. So we have to have more products, and this kind of technology is also very important. And then you have machinery technology. You have all the kind of tractors and different innovations coming from that. We have, like, for example, the cotton picker, which is like a factory on wheels. And now you have IT, and IT can do a whole bunch of stuff. So you can have.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, Luis. I agree with you. I've been involved in startups in Silicon Valley for 39 years, and I've been involved in AI for 29 years. So when you use these tools, they truly have superpowers. And the things like the genetics, we have companies that are using multi-agent large language models. When you start looking at that medical research, I mean, this is just these are frontier tools to help us discover things that we haven't even dreamed of. People don't understand how fast they are. For instance, when we take those multi-agent models and put them on top of a quantum computer, they're 100 million times faster than the fastest computer out there today, which means what would take you 10,000 years is taking us 200 seconds right now.
You know what we have done? We took all the farm boundaries from Brazil, and we did that for Argentina to some place in like say 1/3 of Argentina and the whole farming area in Brazil. And we ran an analysis in which we discovered what they have been, which kind of crop those farms have been growing for the last 5 years, and if those crops have been through water stress or through heat stress or some kind of stress. We also have another algorithm that is capable of figuring out if the crops has been managed properly. So if they have, for example, if they have a planting problem, it generates some kind of signature on the biomass. So you can analyze that. And by doing that, we can generate an index of agronomical fitness for the land. That probably is the most important thing when you're granting credit to a grower, because this.
No, I agree with you. People don't think about it. It's so important, right? To have
very important. Yeah.
So what we're doing is, so one of the things we talk about is actually you can hear me speaking at the UN about it. So taking it from the farm to the table, and going down through. And it's like you said, there's one thing about going down through and rotating crops. There's another thing about going down through and taking those fields and optimizing them so you can plant better and more and do it in an organic way to be able to make this plant a little bit better place. And so one of the things that we got to do is from all the way down through the chain from where you start to the table is how can we go down through and optimize it, right? So optimize the crop coming out, optimize the location. Now, another question for you. I mean, you're in Brazil, but I hear about this stuff all over the world. So, we hear about it in Africa, we hear about it in the US. What are your plans to expand?
We do have plans. We are doing Argentina now. We are expanding in Argentina. Probably the next one in line is going to be Colombia, and all Latin American countries pretty much in agriculture. They pretty much work the same way. And then probably the next one will be the US. But the US is different because the whole financial part is in the US is mostly solved by the banks. And farmers in the US are much better protected by the government because you have an insurance that is, everybody must have an insurance. The insurance is going to cover if you have some kind of problem. Overall, in the US, agriculture is more predictable. So it's just one season per year. Things are better organized. So in Brazil, in Latin America, you have a huge logistical problem. The weather is less predictable, and then you have the problem of 2 seasons per year. They have a problem of the whole infrastructure is a little less effective. So you have to have the problem is more difficult. So it can help more. You have a larger space for optimization, I would say. But I think US is a good market too. Africa is okay. I have served Africa in my former company. It's the problem. I think the problem in Africa is more like institutional. You need to have some kind of a predictable environment so you can start planning for the next 5 years, for example. And there are also I don't know if you know that, but there's a lot of Brazilian growers there. And
I didn't know that. I didn't know it.
Yeah, because the weather and the soil is pretty much the same as we have here. If you look at the map, Brazil and Africa match, and it's pretty much the same thing. But I have a problem. Like, for example, we don't have a shop that you can use to repair your tires on the road. So when you start transporting your grains, you get a huge problem if you get a flat tire in your truck. This is the kind of problem that we face there. So it's major infrastructure problem. I think at that point, of course you can use computers and information technology, but I think it's more fundamental problem. Here we have that infrastructure. The infrastructure is good enough. It's a huge market. I'd say that agriculture is like 1/4 of the Brazilian economy, so it's important. And then you start to have all these optimizations opportunity that we are working with, and there are opportunities for the environment too. Like, for example, there's a lot of areas that are pasture and they are degraded. So you can raise like one cattle per hectare, or I would say like half a cattle per acres, because probably you think in acres, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very ineffective. If you want to convert one area, one farm of degraded pasture into highly productive agriculture, it's going to cost you probably a few tens of thousands of dollars per hectare. And it's expensive, but it's highly effective. Probably the money can be paid within like 10 years or like little less, like 5 to 10 years. So it's a good business, but you have to have a large capital viability in order to make it possible. But if you do that, for every hectare of pasture that you convert is another hectare of forest that people are not going to put down. So it's important business. It's highly dependent on financial. So you need to make sure that you have a very efficient farmer that is going to be able to pay for the loan, and you have to have the proper financial structure. And if you have that, you can grant a loan that is tied to the farm. and can be used to convert those degraded pastures into highly productive agricultural areas. So this is the kind of things that it's a financial move, but it's highly effective in protecting the environment. Once these degraded areas become more economical, valuable, they have a much better chance of becoming effective in protecting the surrounding environment. And I think that's what we see, and that's the opportunity that we have. And sometimes it comes down to money. So we have to have money in order to make things enable things like that.
No, it's interesting because you got 1.3 billion people in 54 countries, and you've got the largest population in Africa, Nigeria, which has about 270 million people. So you've got and the largest population in the world under 30 is there. It's the fastest growing. So
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't rocket science, right? It's a good place, but you're right. I mean, some of the things we got to look at is things like crop yield, right? How do we increase crop yield, and how do we make it highly more efficient? The other thing is, I was just with some of the wealthiest families on the planet in California, and we were actually talking about agriculture. And one of the things we talked about is, and these were some of the farming families, right? We talked about how we can go down through and with global climate change coming on, things like hydroponics, other ways to be able to grow, to be able to take care of the weather, right? To basically shield ourselves from the weather situation. So, what you're doing is incredibly important. So, what ways has Tarkin's platform improved the financial operations, agricultural input companies and cooperatives? How's it increased? If you could say, even a percentage of business better or saving, what would you say? What is
we putting in just a few words? We reduce the cost of the money. So we have very, in the developing world, we have very high. Normally, we have very high interest rates. So money is very expensive, and when it gets more difficult to separate the good payer from the bad payer, money gets even more expensive. So what we do is we create the right infrastructure, so we can have debt of a much better quality. And because we have that, over time, the cost of the capital start to get more affordable. So you can have like 1 point, 2 points, percentage points in improvement over the cost of capital over the years. I think that's the biggest output, and it's important because as I said at the beginning, the margins are getting tighter, and the cost of the capital comes into the math, and so it's important to reduce it. Currently, the agricultural sector is the biggest, is the biggest interest payer in our market. So it's the largest cost of the capital for the most important sectors, and most of that cost comes from information asymmetry. You don't really know, and when you don't really know, normally the financier is going to charge a little bit more to compensate for that. And if you help them to really knowing, then probably we're going to be able to, not probably, that's for sure. We are seeing that. We start to see money getting more affordable for the farmers, which is going to give them better sustainability for their business. And that's what we do. We also, as our software companies, we have a lot of automation, and we bring more efficiency to the process, which is a very good side effect. But the most important thing is making money less expensive, which is a huge problem. Probably this year is probably the biggest problem in agriculture here. Even with the drought and things like that, the cost of money is huge.
So you've recently partnered with Allaire to enhance data integration. How do these kind of partnerships really contribute to you and your objectives and your service offerings?
I think we like to think of ourselves as software infrastructure companies. So we build the data infrastructure for the players to connect. So we work with industries, resellers, financiers, insurance companies, and We help them to connect to each other in order to streamline their processes, and also to share a common data layer that is going to help them to make smarter decisions, and to build products that otherwise wouldn't be possible. Like, for example, you want to have I think it's going to be useful to put it in a more concrete way. You want to have low an offer on to be available on the exact moment that the salesperson from a given agriculture input reseller in Brazil is closing the deal with a farmer. So they are closing the deal to purchase the fertilizer and the pesticide for the next season, and they're evaluating how this deal is going to be financed. The farmer expects to the seller to finance the whole thing, so they don't have money to pay on cash, and you're putting together a solution that is going to make it possible for this farmer, for example, to finance this year.
So what they do is they finance their crops in advance. So so they're financed in advance. And what portion do they get if they, let's say they've got 100,000? I'm making it up, $100,000 dollars for a crop. How much does a farmer get out of that $100,000?
Their margins normally 10%. So if it costs, normally if it costs them 100,000, they're going to get like 100, probably 110. That's their margin, and the cost of the money for them is like, in Brazil it's going to be like somewhere from 17 to 19.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How can they make any money? Because the percentage, if they went to a normal vendor, there's no margin left for them. They're in the hole.
Yes, but the margin is also built into the, if the margin were zero, they would make more money. But it's an important part of their cost. It's a very important part of their cost, because the cost of the money. They don't lend the money for one whole year. It's just for like 9 months, because the crop.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But still, over 9 months, that's still a lot of.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. That's like
and they expect that. Yes, sorry.
Go ahead.
They expect that problem to be solved by the vendor. So the vendor needs to put something in place in order for them to have their inputs affordable on term, to be paid when they harvest. So normally the piece of the puzzle that is expected to solve this problem is the vendor. That's why they have been granting credit for the last 20 years. Because if they don't, they won't be capable of selling the inputs to the grower, and they're going to be out of business. So that's the challenge. So the vendor is, what we do is we help the vendor to have financing offer from a bank built into their offer. So when they are closing the deal, they can evaluate which bank is going to be effective in financing that specific grower. They're going to have that grower already approved within the bank's policy, and then they're going to be able to assemble the structure for the financing for that purchase automatically. When they do that, they can start moving the credit from their own balance sheet to the bank balance sheet. That's what we want. And by doing that, we can have a more affordable loan, and that's the business.
I got a couple of final questions. So what advice would you offer to other entrepreneurs that are looking to innovate? Because it's not so easy in agribusiness, right? Agriculture, unless you've done it before, and finance. So what words of wisdom would you give them?
That's an interesting story. This is my fourth company. The third one was called Strider, and it was also in agriculture. And when I started it, I was not from agriculture. I was an outsider. I was looking for my next business, and I actually at that time I hadn't put a foot on a farm in my life, and I had the opportunity to talk to a few American ag techs. Companies that build software for agriculture, and they all told me that we should look at this business because Brazil and everything. And I started exploring it, and then I found the opportunity for my farming company, which was it was an inside the farm company. We built a system that helped to manage the pesticide strategy in a farm, and that's how I discovered agriculture. So I was an outsider. I think when you are an outsider, it's very important to listen to your customer, because normally the customers, they know what they need, and it's important to be very open and to be willing to learn with them And so I think that would be a very good strategy if you're trying to build something in agriculture. The business is huge everywhere in the world. People need to eat, as you know. And even in the US, it's an important part of the American economy as well. And there's a lot of opportunities to build. Normally, the business is very complex, so companies have to deal with a larger entropy, a larger volume of complexity in order to be viable. But it's once you have it, I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think we don't have a lot of ag techs. So the sector is proportionally less served with startups than other sectors. So I think it's a good opportunity. You have to be prepared to really listen to your customer, to deal with with all the complexity of that sector. But I think it's worthy, and you can build something meaningful. And you can use a lot of technology. People tend to expect that those companies are going to be somewhat low tech, but they aren't. We are using a lot of AI, for example, at Tarkin. This last month has been a little crazy because every day something new come up and you have to incorporate that into the product.
Yeah.
And has been like a roller coaster, but also very exciting, and all of that new technology that we have seen coming up can be used. So it's high tech despite being in agriculture. So I don't think you need to have that kind of trade-off. There's a lot of opportunity to use all those very sophisticated technology and build something useful with it in this sector.
No, it's great. Listen, we're coming up to the top of the show. Closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you?
Again, thank you for having me here. I think it's been, I think it's been really fun to build this company. I think probably you know that better than me, right? When you have the opportunity to build things that are transformative and see the results, I think it's worth it. It's really a fun and good thing to do, and even with all the hustles and all the problems that you go through the process, I think it's still worth it. And it's important to remember that, because things tend to get ugly in the process, and some days are difficult. But it's important to see the whole picture, because it's really nice when you see the impact and how those companies are capable of changing the reality. And I think that would be the message.
No, that's great. And what's the best way to get a hold of you? LinkedIn, email?
Yeah, LinkedIn. People can also send an email. My email is Luiz, Luiz, @tarkin.ag. There's no com and br. And of course, in LinkedIn too. I'll be happy to talk.
That's great. Luiz, thanks for taking time in your busy schedule to join us today. And thanks to all my audience for joining one more time. GSD presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Luiz, if you can just stay online after the show, and we can talk a little bit.